What's up, Summoners? Welcome to another episode of OP Pick or Ban, the 9.22 edition. As always, we're doing our best to keep you guys updated on which picks you need to pick or ban for the patch. This is going to be the last patch of the season, so keep an eye out on the Rift and stay prepared. We're seeing some nerfs to some of the strongest champions from last patch, but overall, nothing is shifting too heavily. As a result, we're going to see some new as well as old faces here. But before we get started, make sure you go to ProGuides.com if you want to see huge improvements in your rank. We upload video guides similar to this one on our website every single day. As of now, we're currently uploading a Challenger gameplay analysis guide for every single champion, so make sure to click that link below. Also, we have an exclusive coaching feature called Play with a Pro, which provides instant, on-demand, 24/7 coaching from the best of the best. Trust me, guys, you don't want to miss out on this, so sign up today. All right, with all that being said, let's jump right into it. First off, we see a familiar face with Fiora top. The biggest reasons we want to mention her are that Pantheon and Kayle are both facing nerfs. While a lot of people don't see Pantheon's nerf as significant, the travel speed on Pantheon's stun matters a lot in this specific matchup. Since Pantheon and Kayle are both extremely popular picks, statistically speaking, Fiora is going to play versus them a lot. If they're weaker, she'll naturally win more games due to relative power levels changing. She's going to benefit from the Pantheon nerfs without a doubt. He's one of her hardest counters, and in spite of that, she still did pretty well last patch with a positive win rate and the 4th highest play rate in the top lane. If you don't know, Fiora did receive a buff in patch 9.19 that allowed her Q to start hitting turrets. She's an even bigger split push threat than before as a result of this. In my opinion, Fiora is one of the strongest champions in the game when she gets good matchups. With her leads, she's able to solo dive you under turret, and after that, she proceeds to break it down quickly. The best word I can think of to describe her is unforgiving. You really don't have any room for mistakes against her, and honestly, any champion that carries that label is a solid solo queue pick. While it's been a minute since we last mentioned him, Jax has been and still is a savage that ravages through the top lane. Just like Fiora, he's going to have a smoother trip through Summoner's Rift with slightly weaker opponents in Pantheon and Kayle. Although the Pantheon nerfs won't significantly affect trades, the weaker wave clear means that Jax will have a little bit more say in terms of wave management. The Kayle versus Jax matchup, which is one of the more popular ones up top by the way, was a little too close to 50-50, and these nerfs should finally give Jax the footing over her that he needs to reclaim his throne as the king of solo carrying. Jax is a champion who's so good at team fighting and split pushing. Whenever possible, you want to choose a champion who has multiple options so that you don't immediately lose the game when a single option is no longer viable. Spear of Shojin is being removed next season, so make sure to keep abusing it before it disappears from the face of the planet. Very few champions outscale Jax. Even in losing matchups, he almost always has a breakpoint he can eventually hit where he'll win a fight. If you want to pick Jax, you'll probably want to throw your ban at either Pantheon, Singed, or Malphite, as they'll give you a pretty hard time. Alright, that's a wrap on the top lane. Make sure to check out those builds one more time. I hate bugs. Do you hate bugs? You can't avoid them in the jungle, so I guess we need to mention Kha'Zix once again. Last patch, he was the second most played jungler and is yet to give up his hot streak of excellent win rates. He's simply too good to not succeed in solo queue because of players' tendencies to overextend, overstay, and randomly get caught out. We might sound like a broken record here, but Kha'Zix is a dominant pick because of his neutral objective control and high burst damage. He's able to control the biggest factors in the game: Dragon, Rift Herald, Baron, and the random picks that lead to those objectives. Since his Q deals isolation damage, a lot of champions struggle to fight him 1v1 also. As the game drags on, he only gets stronger with levels as well as more items, meaning you're not any safer than you were 10 minutes ago just because you've made it to the mid or late game when you play against a Kha'Zix. He's definitely worth throwing a ban at, and a lot of the player base agrees, as his ban rate was pretty high at 15% last patch. Is this a time loop? Just kidding, Echo can only go backwards. Nevertheless, he's back again and there aren't any nerfs in sight. Get this kid out of here, seriously. Echo is kind of like the LeBlanc of the jungle right now, except he's easier and arguably stronger. In other words, he can get in, kill his enemy, and get out for free. As a jungler, Echo has decent ganks alongside a solid clear speed. You'll want to pick Echo especially if your team is stacked on physical damage, since he's one of the best AP junglers at the moment. Make sure that when you do pick him, you think carefully about which lanes can set up ganks. Champions with crowd control make it a lot easier for you to land your own stun, and a couple of takedowns is really all you need to get the ball rolling. Check out these jungle builds one more time as we move on to the mid lane. Mid lane is packed with some familiar faces, the first one being Ahri. As the face of KDA and also as a solid pick, it's honestly no surprise that Ahri is still such a prevalent pick. In the same way that we mentioned her previously, Ahri's Glacial Augment build is still her go-to as of now. It gives her the pick-making potential she needs to hard carry her games, and also makes it easier for her to land her charm. If you prefer her Electrocute standard build, by all means go for it, because we know some players still lean towards that one. You'll deal more damage for sure, but you'll sacrifice pick-making for it, so just be aware of that. Our analysts typically lean toward Glacial Augment on any champion that's on the fence between it and other keystones because of how much impact you have on the game, rather than just your own lane. You can make those game-winning plays and start fights when most players are running like headless chickens through the rift. Out of all of our mid lane picks this patch, Ahri is the safest and also has the best wave clear. That means she's the most consistent by far, since every character in the game struggles to play from behind. You just struggle less when you can clear waves and prevent your opponents from A-ramming for free and ending the game. Katarina is up next. While it's not significant, a Kayle nerf is still welcomed by Katarina players since that invulnerability can be pretty pesky to play against. On to the main squeeze though. Katarina seems to always have lethal threat against her opponents and pops off really hard in teamfights. While her early laning is weak, she's definitely able to punish squishier enemies if they position poorly. Especially in lower elo, it's pretty easy to just all in your opponent and chunk them since they won't expect the damage or not know how to avoid it. Regardless, once you finish Gunblade, the lane is not really a safe place for your opponent anymore. The slow from it is enough for Katarina to really go hard in the paint and commit for some kills. Once teamfights start breaking out, you already know Katarina is going to hard carry. Especially against teams that have limited hard crowd control, Katarina is able to abuse her mobility and AoE damage to start her reset chain and destroy her competition. She doesn't really have any skill shots to land as well, so as long as you can come out of the lane phase alright, it's easy to consistently carry games with Katarina. Fizz is back again. Fizz and chips, everyone. Alright, that felt bad even as I said it. Every video game has one of those characters, and Fizz is definitely one of League's. He's slippery, hard to kill, and yet still one-shots you? Balanced, I guess. Fizz is a really safe blind pick and is still able to hard carry games consistently because he can one-shot his targets and get away with it too. A lot of strong champions tend to have at least some window of weakness. Fizz is no exception, but he's still too safe because of his E. It's difficult for many junglers to be willing to gank Fizz at all because he'll usually just troll pull out and waste their time. If you play control mages, you'll likely need to throw your ban at him since he exerts so much kill pressure on them. On the other hand, if you're trying to make those last minute gains, it's definitely worth practicing him a couple times in normals and spamming him in ranked because of how influential of a pick Fizz is. Fizz has good backline access, stalls for time, and landing a shark, whether it's baby shark or daddy shark, usually spells out death for whoever they latch onto. Check out these mid lane builds one more time as we move on to the bottom lane. The bottom lane features two returning members, Caitlyn and Ashe. First off, let's talk about Caitlyn. No changes set for her specifically, so she'll still remain the reliable sheriff serving justice throughout the bottom lane. Like we've highlighted many times, Caitlyn is an excellent sieger and is able to play through any bottom lane matchup, coming out even or ahead. The lane priority she's able to take enables her team to take dragons and for her to try and take the bottom lane turret as soon as possible. Higher elo players will tell you that when you play Caitlyn and don't get spam ganked, you should honestly be able to take your turret by 15 or 16 minutes at the latest pretty much every time. In the late game, she's definitely still one of the safest champions because of her traps and net. She has the tools needed to protect herself in the heat of the moment and also take precautionary steps to give her opponents a hard time. Once again, we're mentioning Ashe as well. She did finally get nerfed this patch, but they're not significant enough to knock her out of the standings. While her win rate will definitely drop, her damage output at all stages of the game is still identical to her damage on previous patches. Ashe is another safe pick because of her long range who can apply a lot of kill pressure against practically any lane opponent. This is because of her passive, which allows her to slow down and chase her foes, as well as her ultimate, which pretty much spells out death for anyone who takes that giant arrow to the face. Part of the reason her all-in is so strong is because of how well she uses lethal tempo. Since she'll usually lead with her W, it'll start the cooldown of lethal tempo as she moves toward her slowed enemies. By the time she's in position to start trading heavily, lethal tempo will be ready to use. Overall, Ashe provides utility in the form of engage as well as vision control with her E, while also dealing a respectable amount of damage. Wrapping up our bot lane picks is Jhin. His statistics last patch were promising as he held both high win rates and play rates. In a sense, he's very similar to Ashe because of his utility alongside high damage output. While he's not as outright broken as her, Jhin definitely has his place, especially because his laning is much stronger than almost every other marksman. With aggressive supports, Jhin provides the extra CC needed to push for lethal threat, making him a dominant laner against a lot of popular picks like Kai'Sa. You'll want to pick Jhin for his strong laning and the utility he provides, especially versus teams that don't of a tank, Jhin is a great pick because of his hard engage and crowd control. Jin's damage is high, don't underestimate him. The issue is that it comes out in cycles, meaning that he's only good for taking out one target at a time. This is the real reason why he's regarded as low damage carry, but strictly speaking in terms of single target damage, Jhin doesn't really fall behind the rest of the cast because the insane scaling built into his passive. One more time, here are those bot lane builds as we transition into support. First up is Janna. Aggressive supports like Blitzcrank and Nautilus are facing some nerfs this patch, meaning that once again, if you want to win, just pick Janna. A lot of players write her off because she's not a highlight reel machine like her aggressive counterparts, but numbers rarely lie. Last patch, she held a 52% win rate and was the second most played support. To put this into words, it just means that she's reliable, consistent, and effective. Janna is a good pick right now because the popularity of divers and assassins. She puts a stop to these pests with her tornado, shield, and her ultimate. It's so difficult to take down your mark when you're getting tossed around in a storm. Now that I think about it, pretty much everything's harder to do when you're stuck in a typhoon. Not speaking from experience, but you know, I have my sources. During the lane phase, Janna is really simple. All you do is poke and disengage, rinse and repeat. Once your opponents are low, you can play aggressively to look for kills or zone them off the wave. In the late game, at the very least, your marksman is going to love you later on when they don't have to deal with a million people diving them at once. Next up on the list is Rakan. With playmaking supports getting nerfed, you always need to watch out for other characters filling similar niches. It's pretty simple really, if other playmakers are nerfed, that means that the ones who aren't become stronger comparatively. Rakan has escaped the nerf hammer this time, so he'll remain a great pick in the current meta. Honestly, he's a great pick in pretty much any meta that doesn't revolve around Poppy or Leona. Unfortunately, Leona is pretty popular, but Rakan is just such a great champion since he's designed so well. Rakan is mobile and able to do everything. He can peel, engage, and avoid death due to his high mobility acrobatics. We've seen a good amount of him at Worlds, so he's got the competitive seal of approval too. Bottom line, pick Rakan. The last champion we think is worth mentioning is Senna. She just came out, but we're going to tell you guys right now, she's worth banning. It's extremely unlikely that anyone on your team will be proficient on her, and at the same time, playing versus her is going to be annoying. Honestly, this isn't just a matter of being OP, it's a matter of knowing what she does. Her E adds a new dynamic to the game, and it changes things up heavily since it essentially turns her into a moving Akali shroud. You're not going to enjoy playing versus it, and your teammates aren't either. If you don't need to ban anything else, it's definitely worth throwing your ban at Senna until the end of the season at least. Another reason you should ban Senna is that most players will likely edge towards safety when playing against new champions. Senna scales very well in terms of both damage and utility, so this fact doesn't favor you at all. Here's a quick recap of all the builds we mentioned for supports. That concludes this episode of OP Pick or Ban. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you want more content just like this to help you improve, check out ProGuides.com, where we've teamed up with pro players to create guides designed to take your game to the next level. Also, keep an eye on our YouTube channel, where we're constantly updating it with videos just like this. Good luck out there on the Rift, and we'll see y'all next time.